Hey, we should have you all live and joining the room. Wonderful to have you, so many of you here. And let us know in the chat room, where are you coming from? I'm always fascinated to see where people are coming from around the world. We've got such an exciting topic today, and I'm super, super excited and relieved to be going through this. And why I use the word relieved is that I find myself in quite a rut at the moment, and Corin yesterday just showed me how to get out of my rut. So we're going to share with you tonight what that all means and how you too can get the same benefits from it. So before I share my screen, and Corin, I'm going to steal back the screen just for 2 seconds to share with everyone here. So what are we doing? We're basically dealing with family legacy and relationships with money, and uncover how your early influences shape your financial perspectives and your behavior. I want to share just some things with you. I always start this webinar series with what would it mean to you in 12 months or less to be earning at least 5,000 passive income without any hassle or complexity? And secondly, how would you like a system which will statistically help you get there 5 times quicker, simpler, and safer? And I want to introduce you to 2 people. Jordan, who's a high net worth 55-year-old, worked very hard in his life and wants to build a portfolio to ensure his wealth is preserved. And he wanted to build globally diversified passive income of $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $25,000 a month. He wanted to diversify his investments across countries, currencies, and assets. He wanted to use his limited time to get effective results with predictability. He wanted to save decades of frustration and millions of dollars to get the right knowledge for him and his family. He wanted wealth protection, a plan B, and peace of mind. He wanted to be held accountable with an accountability partner to get results. He wanted to have a family office to help him manage all his financial affairs. He wanted to create generational wealth for his family. He wanted to have a fully completed execution wealth plan and investor strategy sheet. And he wanted to get results. If you resonate with Jordan, just type in there, Jordan. What about Victoria? An entrepreneur in her 50s devoted to family and business, aiming to build generational wealth. She's got a packed schedule. She seeks a streamlined investment strategy that empowers her to make wise decisions, aligns with her goals, and frees up her time for her grandchildren and daughters. She wants to understand the investment landscape, so she feels empowered to make the right decisions for herself and her family. And she wants to focus on achieving financial freedom to cherish more moments with a loved one. Both of them achieved this and living a life unlimited through Diversification 5.0. And if you want more details around this, we run an entire challenge on this, and the next challenge starts at the end of July. And just a reminder, we've been running a 7-webinar series, and the last one next week is on generational wealth, social and conscious capital. And we've got David Lipschitz and Nicholas Liebman. I hope I'm pronouncing both those names right. Super excited. However, before we go to generational wealth and before we go to social and conscious capital and changing the world, we have to start with ourselves. And so it's without further ado that tonight I'm super, super excited, and we will be running a Q&A. So I know I've done this with Corin and Bianca before, and engagement is really important. So just put your questions in so that we can run through it. If you're unsure as to what the next steps are with regards to what we do at the Wealth University, then just go to wealthuniversity.org/next. It's our navigator, and it'll literally take you through, the process. We always say that there's 2 things you need to know in terms of succeeding. You need the right information and you need the right partners. And so tonight we are giving an example of the right information, where you're literally going in, and this is my own personal profile, and you're learning all about yourself. And I'm not going to steal Corin and Bianca's thunder, but this is really, really, truly incredible. When you get to know yourself and how and why you make decisions, then you're going to make much better decisions. And for our mastermind members, and for those that join our mastermind, we're actually building up to our wealth weekend. So this is where we literally are going to get personal in terms of the investor Enneagram and wealth, social and conscious capital, generational wealth, building lifelong investment relationships. We're going to be staying in a boutique hotel in the cradle of mankind, humankind, which is literally where humankind began. There's going to be game drives, a Josie tour, and even the Springboks versus the All Blacks rugby game. Amazing dinners and lunches, and it's from the 28th of August to the 1st of September. But you didn't come here to learn or listen from me. You came here to learn and listen from Corin and Bianca. And so without further ado, I am going to shut up. And with a huge amount of intrigue and excitement, I hand over to you, Corin and Bianca, so that we can go to the next stage in terms of this. And again, just to repeat for the mastermind members who are here, the whole idea behind these free webinar series are to give people the top of the iceberg. At a mastermind level, we're going a lot deeper. And next week, we've actually got our mastermind session where we'll evolve and go even deeper next week as we start to accelerate towards the Wealth Weekend. Over to you.
Thank you, Scott. Hi to everybody, and thanks again for the opportunity to talk about something that I could literally talk about for hours on end. So I will try and rein it in tonight and keep it concise. I know that quite a few of you were here in our previous webinar where Bianca took you through an introduction to the Enneagram. I am going to do a little bit of a recap for those of you who weren't on that call. But as Scott said tonight, we're going to go a little bit deeper. That's the beauty of the Enneagram. It's complex, it's rich, it's my great privilege to share it with you. But what is it? When we're looking at the Enneagram, there are many different ways to untangle it. It is a symbol, and that's how most people come across it. It's also a system. It talks about systems perspective, which I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail in a bit. It's a dynamic map, as Scott said, which helps us to trace our own thinking patterns, our behaviors, our motivations behind our behaviors, and how we can then move on from that, how we can grow and develop within our own map. And it's also a teaching, and that's what I'm here to share with you tonight. Let's try and get this going. As I said, the Enneagram is what we call an open systems perspective. I'm sure a lot of you have come across personality profiling tools. There's the MBTI, there's the Discovery Insights. If you've ever worked in corporate, you would have done a whole handful of these types of assessments. The Enneagram is not like that. Its aim is not to box people. In fact, it's the very opposite. It's to show you where you resonate. And what we mean by that is it shows you the box or the cage that you have created for yourself. And the bars that make up that cage are those that you see on the right-hand side there. It's your world view. It's the narrative that you've told yourself about yourself and about other people in the world. It's your defense mechanism. It's your vulnerability. It's everything that you have created to protect yourself against an ever increasingly demanding and complex world. What the Enneagram offers us is an opportunity to break down our own cage one bar at a time. And that's the work that we engage in together. George Gurdjieff, who is the father of the modern Enneagram as we know it, said this, and I think it's really important as an introduction to where we're going with the Enneagram and the Enneagram of wealth. When in personality, which is what we are when we're in our Enneagram, we're in our egoic identity, but we are like machines. We get caught up in our default patterns in order to survive the world as best we can. George Gurdjieff called it sleepwalking through life. We need to move beyond our mechanical functions. We need to become aware of our own functioning so that we can improve upon that, so that we can become aware to the decisions that we make and why we make them. The Enneagram is not about who we are, but rather why we are. And when we can understand that, we can improve on the who. The microchip of this incredibly complex machine is the ego. And its only job is to protect our self-image. Our self-image, of course, is really the conditioned self. It's something that we chose to protect ourselves in our very early formative years. And this evening, I'm going to take you through a little bit of a story of each of the 9 types and what that conditioned self looks like and where it comes from. But these are our defense mechanisms. These are what we choose when we're too little to have the cognitive resources, the emotional intelligence to deal with the world as we enter into it and start to make our own way within it. So instead, we choose to present ourselves in a particular way. And this is what we mean by the conditioned self. As Scott said up front, There's no point trying to understand our relationship with money and with wealth before we fully understand the relationship that we have with ourselves and the messages that we have received consciously or unconsciously as children, and how we've internalized those, how we've made those part of our self-identity. These become our reactions, our responses, our coping mechanisms, and for the large part, these are subconscious. A bit of a recap then from last time, and for those of you who weren't on it, here are the 9 Enneagram types. Each of them has an a core fear. My screen is just suddenly frozen. There we go. Their worst fear in presenting themselves to the world. For example, for type 8, the very worst thing that can happen is to become vulnerable or to be seen as vulnerable. This comes from a young child who was forced to grow up at a very young age, who was forced to show up as being strong and in control of themselves and their responses. And if that is your ego, if that is your personality, then everything that your ego, your microchip is trying to do is to ensure that you never show up as vulnerable. You can have a look around the Enneagram here, see if you can identify your core fear. Because what this gives us is an idealized image. If I am sure that I never come across as vulnerable, then my idealized image and the image that I want to present to the world is that I am strong. Always. Every decision I make, every action I take is done to ensure that I am seen as strong, settled, good, kind, helpful, successful, special, unique, wise, loyal, responsible, fine, okay, never bothered. This then leads to the crux of the Enneagram, which is about the motivation behind all of our behaviors. If you can identify your core motivation on this screen, then you've identified your Enneagram type. I'm going to leave that up for a little bit. The problem with the core motivation is that it controls everything that we do. And as a result, we become blind to our greatest fear. In other words, vulnerability, pain for the 7s, emptiness for the 5s, conflict for the 9. In Enneagram terms, this is the shadow side. If we are so focused on showing up as strong, we are unable to see vulnerability in ourselves and instead project that onto everybody else around us. In order for me to be strong and to remain strong, you need to be vulnerable. You need to be weak. This is what we're leading to, as Scott mentioned. This is the Enneagram of wealth. And if we're able to understand our very early relationship with money and the messages that we received and how these were internalized, this in turn will inform the type of investor that we are. It ties in very closely to our core Enneagram type and the motivation behind it. I know I'm going quickly, but I'm putting this up here so that I can come back to it as we go through each type. Scott, are you able to pick up on questions in the chat room, or people putting their hands up, or is that only at the end of the webinar?
Yeah, my suggestion is so that you don't lose your flow, cruise through it, and then we'll ask questions, because otherwise we might. And I know your hotel, you've got some internet issues as well. So I'd rather get through the meat and the substance of it, and then we'll do Q&A.
Okay, no problem, no problem. The Enneagram for me is very much like a kaleidoscope. As I mentioned earlier, it's systems thinking. It's a number of different ways of turning the Enneagram. And each time you turn or twist it as the system, it takes you one level deeper. In the last webinar, Bianca took us through the surface level, which is the 9 types, where they come from and how they show up in the world. Tonight, we're going to take that one layer down. If you have a look at the outer ring of the Enneagram, you will see that it's divided into 3 different centers of expression. There's an action center at the top that embodies the types 8, 9, and 1. We then move on to the feeling center, just below to the right. Those are the types 2, 3, and 4. And then the thinking center, 5, 6, and 7. It's important to understand these because this will give you a good idea of where you make decisions from, whether you're making them intuitively or instinctively, whether you're making them emotionally, or whether you're making them intellectually. Understanding that is the first step to understanding the relationship that you have with wealth and with money and with investments. For example, this is my own Enneagram profile. I type as an Enneagram 2, but I'm not just a 2. I have a very strong 1, which I resonate with. That is my action type. And a very strong 6, which is my thinking type. So although I am an emotional type 2, and I tend to make decisions from an emotional point of view, I react emotionally, I respond emotionally. For me, to be able to figure out what the right thing for me to do is to ask myself, how would I feel if I made that decision? How would I feel if I didn't? But that's only 1/3 of who I am as a complex individual. I show up as a 1, I act as a 1, and I think like a 6. And I could be making financial decisions from any one of those 3 numbers. So let's see how it works. Let's look at the action center first, types 8, 9, and 1. The core need for people who sit in these types is independence and a very deep craving for autonomy. People who have a core type in the action center have as their primal emotion anger. Their trauma, as their childhood trauma, sits in a lack of holding during their early formative years. And what we mean by this is that they suffered the separation from their primary caregiver, usually the mother, too early. Either they had to grow up very quickly, or, as is the case for most of the action types, they were the firstborn, which meant that they had to give up their special place for the next child in line. This coincides with independent locomotion as the very young child starts to explore and control their environment and realizes that they have an impact through movement as they make their way into the world. Now, for each of these, 8, for example, initiates action. They became their own protective parents. They became tougher. They made their own rules. They go their own way. They developed a very strong external shell, which is defined by toughness and by strength. They push against boundaries. These are the children who, if you told them no, would go ahead and do it anyway. Watch me, challenge me, dare me. They assert their truth. They can't tolerate any form of limitation or boundary. These are your mobilizers. They initiate action. They're impulsive, they're decisive, they're reactive. In fact, they have their own form of communication. It's called DAC, and that stands for direct assertive communication. It's what they pride themselves on. Their action is external. What we mean by this is that they're able to express their anger openly, assertively, confidently. They're not afraid to get angry or to show you how they feel. You never have to worry where you stand with an 8 because they'll tell you, they'll let you know if you've upset them or if you've gotten their way or they see you as an obstacle, they will tell you. Nothing is hidden with an 8. Everything is externalized. The core defense mechanism there is denial. Denial of my own weakness, denial of my own vulnerability, denial often of my own fault. The 8s don't apologize. What am I apologizing for? Expressing myself, behaving in a way that I see as authentic. What's interesting is that each of these 9 types has, at some stage in human history, ruled the world. The 8 resonate with the Romans and with the Vikings. It's that strong, dominant, go out there and get what you want energy that we see from the 8. They get their needs met, that need for independence and autonomy, through demanding it. So what we see here is what we refer to as the power investor. The nines ease their pain of separation by erasing their own sense of self and by merging with others, blending in, creating a greater sense of union than the one that they lost with the primary caregiver. They go along to get along. We call this dissemination. They disseminate action, which means that they blend in. They smooth things out. They spread it out evenly. They distribute action. They diffuse action. They dissipate. What we see with 9s is scattered energy rather than the focused drive of the 8. The core defense mechanism for the 9 is dissociation. If I don't put myself fully into this world, then I don't feel that I am ever completely separated from it. I have one foot in and one foot out. The 9s feel deeply angry, but they're unable to express this. So what we see from the 9s is passive-aggressive behavior, sulking, withdrawing, saying things like, well, I don't mind. You do what you feel like. I'll just go along with whatever you want to do, whatever the group wants to do. So they get their needs met by withdrawing. What we see there is the moderate investor. And then the type 1s, our strict perfectionists. The 1s become their own strict parent. They set up their own routines, their own rules, their own standards, their own guidelines. These are the little children who put their clothes out in the morning, the night before they have to go to school, that pack their own lunchbox, that want to do things their own way, who grow up very quickly learning that if I want something done, I have to do it myself. These are the children that throw temper tantrums when they can't tie their own shoelaces or brush their own hair the way that they want it to be done. What they're doing is conforming. They're behaving the way that they think they should as mini adults to survive in the world. They're copying, they're idealizing the adults around them. They get deeply frustrated when they're unable to do something because they're too young or because their bodies are too little. But what we see with them, sorry, my screen is really playing up here, is the consolidation of action, making things right, putting things into boxes, creating checklists, tidying things up. So where the 8 comes along and explodes in a room because of excitement and passion, the 1 comes along and cleans it all up. The 9 sits in the corner and watches all of this and worries that there's going to be arguments or conflicts or tension somewhere. So for the 1s, their core defense mechanism is what we call action formation. I will show up not the way that I feel inside, but the way that I think I should. And that's what we mean by internalizing their anger. They find that they are unable to express it because it's not okay to do that. It's not appropriate. And if anybody knows what the appropriate thing is to do, it's the 1. So the 1s get their needs met by earning it, by being good and by being responsible. What we see with them is what we call the blue chip investor, investing in products that are responsible, socially responsible, that do the right thing, and that can prove that they do the right thing. There then are our 3 action types. At the end of this, I'm going to ask some of our core members here to share a little bit of their own narrative so that you can see how this plays out in reality. Moving on then to the feeling centers. And for people with a core type in the feeling center, there's a stark realization that this is a social world, that when I become separate from my parents, I'm going to have to engage with other children and with other humans. So the core need there is to feel seen, to feel affirmed, to be recognized, to feel connected. The question that these children are asking is, am I okay? Am I okay the way that I am? How do I need to behave? How do I need to show up for you to love me, to be accepted? So we see a shift from independent locomotion. I can control the world through my body and through my actions, to social interaction and acceptance. I am separate, but I still want to connect, and I need to understand how to do that. If I am separate, am I still loved? The feeling centers start to experience a wide range of emotions. This starts at around the age of 4, but the predominant emotion is that of shame. Am I okay? Am I lovable? Am I good enough? All feeling types suffer as their primal emotion, shame. If we go through them, the 2s initiate connection by presenting a likable self in order to gain approval. They realize very quickly that there are aspects of themselves that others don't value, and they internalize these as selfish. If I put my own needs first, if I say what I want, then people will not accept me. And so they ignore anything that in any way looks or comes across as selfish or self-oriented. Their focus becomes purely to meet the needs of others in order to earn love and approval and acceptance, but at all costs to avoid shame. Their core defense mechanism is repression of their own needs and wants and feelings. And their feeling is externalized. It's almost as though they have a mirror in their heart space. And all that can do is reflect others feel okay, and to meet the needs of those around them, then they feel that that is reflected back at them. What we see with the 2s then is the legacy investor. In what way can I change the lives of others? How can I make others better? How can I bring value into other people's lives? This is my story, and I'll share this in a bit. Type 3, if I am seen, then I will be loved and validated. My mother, my father must see me. And in order for them to do that, I have to show up in a way that is worthy, that is valuable. These are the children who come first at everything, who become the fastest runners and the best tennis players, and come first in their class, in everything. Because only when I come first am I truly seen and valued and loved. There's no such thing as second place.
I'll just put my camera on because I'm like pissing myself while you're talking about it anyway.
Thanks, Scott. That's great. Thank you. Do you want to share why?
No, I'll wait till you get to that point, but it's yeah, it's funny.
Oh, okay, great.
Just say my father taught me no one remembers who comes second.
Oh my word. Okay. You're going to tell your story first, Scott. So what the 3s do is they put up role models. They idealize people who they see as being validated, as being valuable. They come up with an image, with goals. Who is most admired in the world, whether it's a movie star or a professional athlete or a highly successful business person, and they model themselves on that. If I become like that person, then I will receive the love, the adoration, the validation, I have to present an image that is worthy of admiration. They demand that their need is met by being the best. And their core defense mechanism then is identification. What we see there is the growth investor. Whatever I do with my money must be seen to be better. It must move faster than anything else. It must be greater than anything else. These are the types that will want to invest in the top companies so that when they're talking around the dinner table, people know exactly where their money is placed and what they've bought into. Our type 4 consolidates emotion. They go very, very deep. The 4s feel things far more deeply than other types do. And they suffer a lack of connection more deeply than the others. It makes them feel that there is something wrong with them. If I'm not loved, if I'm not seen, why is that? And rather than trying to pretend or correct that, they go much deeper into it. So they show up as being unique and special and different in some way in order to earn the admiration and the love. They fantasize, they come up with an ideal world where they could be seen and loved for who they are, if only something were different. So there's a very deep yearning with the 4s. They find it very difficult to stay in the present. They talk about when I was younger, I was happy, or when I find my ideal partner, then I will be happy and content. But as it is, in the moment, I'm not there yet. They feel deeply alone. They often over-identify with feelings of loss, and particularly with feelings of shame and sadness, and they internalize this shame. It becomes part of who they are. So for the 4s, their core defense mechanism is what we call introjection. Everything gets internalized, and they're able to process it there. They get their needs met by withdrawing in the hopes that others will follow them, asking what's wrong, asking how to help them. And the deeper that I withdraw, the more I introject, perhaps the more intense the connection will be. What we see there is the alternative investor. The worst thing for a 4 is to be seen as ordinary or just like everybody else. So these are the investors who will actively seek out different opportunities, ways to show up, ways to be seen as unique, rather than fitting in or showing off, as with the other feeling types. The last center then, the thinking center, the core need there is safety, security, reassurance. And people with a core type in this center resonate with an increased sense of separation anxiety, the fear that comes with the development of cognition, the ability to perceive the world, to understand that it's a very scary place. It's no longer about mastering my autonomous capacities or connecting socially. It's realizing that I have to cope. I am going to be alone in this world. We know that there is no worse nightmare than the nightmares of children. The monsters under the bed, the dark, the knowledge that our parents will die one day and that we will be left alone in this world. And the fear shows up in the form of deep anxiety, nightmares, the ability to ever switch off, a deep spiraling anxiety going into worst case scenarios, and at its most extreme, paranoia. The world is a scary place. There are bad people out there. Bad things happen, and bad things happen to good people. The core emotion is fear. For the 7s, they initiate thinking. This is the intellectual type. They initiate thinking by actively imagining a world that is better than this, by dissociating from anything that is negative or dull or boring or painful. They simply ignore it and they move forward. The sevens are unable to focus on the past. They're unable to think about what happens then. Everything about the sevens is forward thinking, future oriented. They reframe. They're deeply imaginative. They dream. They become intoxicated with new ideas and new ways of doing things. It's this constant processing of what else can I do? Where else can we go? What haven't we thought of? What's the new, the next, the shiny? They act for pleasure, for excitement. It's almost as though they're initiating a mental love affair with the world. It's that whole concept of seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses. They deny any negativity. If you ignore something long enough, it'll just go away. So they have this capacity to completely and totally idealize any situation. Give me the worst thing you can imagine, the sevens will reframe it. They will find an opportunity. They'll find a positive in it. They spark off new ideas. They take one situation and they spark from there. They go, what else? What next? Where else? What haven't we considered? Is my internet wobbling?
You're okay. We lost you for a little bit, but you're back.
Okay, all right. Do I need to repeat?
Yeah, maybe just the last 30 seconds, I'd say, Karen. We've lost you for the last 30 seconds. Maybe restart at the 7. I'd say that'd be a good idea.
Restart the 7.
I reckon, hey, Bianca? It seemed to be as she went to the 7, we kind of lost you a little bit.
Yeah, I probably, yeah, Carl, could start with the 7s again. I think we did all lose you at different times.
Okay, sorry about that. So the 7s initiate thinking by reframing anything that is in any way negative, sad, depressing, boring, frustrating. They're unable to focus on anything that's happened in the past. They don't wallow in what might have been. Instead, they focus on what could be. What are the opportunities out there? What could be awaiting us in the future? They daydream, they imagine, they actively seek out new ideas and new ways of doing things. They initiate a mental love affair with the world. They become intoxicated with new ideas, new concepts, the new, the next, the shiny. If you ever want to know what's happening in town, ask a 7, because guaranteed they've got it all lined up. The 7s invented FOMO. For them, it's about being able to do everything. Carpe diem is the motto of the 7. Their thinking is externalized rather than internalized. It's not about me. It's about what's out there. What can we do? It's called generative or divergent thinking. It takes one idea and then sparks off from that. So these are the people that you want in a brainstorming session. The possibilities are endless. They get their needs met, the needs for safety and security and for reassurance, by demanding a totally different approach, a new opportunity, by actively going after and seeking that. So what we see there is the speculative investor. What else? What's next? What other ideas are out there? What other opportunities are there? The 6 then copes with this increasing, overwhelming sense of anxiety by imagining the absolute worst, and in so doing, preparing for any form of threat or danger. If I know what can happen, then I can deal with it. The 6s are there to plan, to be our risk assessors, to tell us what could go wrong. Somebody has to. I can't plan for something if I don't know what the worst case scenario is. And that way, at least, I can bring it to the attention of others. This knowing creates a sense of safety and security. The sixes are also obsessed with good and bad authority, what we call splitting. As children who think very much in a kind of a binary form, if you are good and I am not like you, then I must be bad, and vice versa. So they come up with very black and white ways of understanding good and bad, or good and evil, or right and wrong. And this creates the defensive investor. It's very hard to find a middle ground or a gray area with sixes where they feel at peace and they feel secure. Their core defense mechanism is projection, putting it out there. What could happen? What might go wrong? If I'm feeling anxious about something, I'm going to make sure that everybody knows about that. They get their needs met by earning it, by making sure that everybody is aware of the danger so that we can mitigate it. This is my brain. I'm very familiar with this. The fives then consolidate thinking. They cope with not feeling properly protected and reassured as children by going within, by consolidating thinking, gathering knowledge, hoarding resources, becoming completely self-sufficient. If I know enough about the world, if I have enough knowledge, enough information, then I can be prepared for anything that might come my way. But they do this by moving away from others, by protecting themselves, by detaching, by compartmentalizing their mental activity. The fives create very firm boundaries. They're able to minimize their needs. You'll notice that a five in any kind of meeting or office environment, the minute they feel overwhelmed by too much noise or too many conversations or too many demands on them, they simply withdraw inside like a tortoise. They go back to their happy place, which is their brain, this brilliant mind where anything is possible. The core defense mechanism for the five is isolation. I am safest in my own mind. And so they get their needs met by withdrawing. What we see from the five then is the conservative investor. I need to know exactly what I'm getting myself into. And I can only do that if I have done all the research that is required. We often find with the fives that they're slower to make a decision because I have to have all of the information that is necessary. We put it all together, and this is the foundation of the Enneagram of wealth. The primary emotions, the direction of the energy, whether it's disseminating or consolidating, external, internal, or contradicted because it's complicated, and how that then shows up for us as investors. That's the ultimate. That's where we're going. So I thought I would share my story as a way of consolidating, because I have two consolidating types in my profile, of making this all make sense. I am a 2. I am the firstborn of 4. I'm also the oldest daughter. And my mother was divorced when we were very young, and we didn't have a lot. In fact, we didn't have a lot at all. But we learned very quickly that things like school trips, sports tours, those were luxuries that others could have that we couldn't. But as the oldest child, what I picked up very quickly was how this affected my mother. I was able to see her emotional sorrow at not being able to give us the things that would make us happy. I saw in her own pain at not being able to provide for her children. And as a 2, all I wanted to do was make that better for her, to ease her emotional pain. She always came up with the most amazing birthday presents and Christmas presents. She seemed to know exactly what each one of us loved. That was an incredible memory for me as a child. And all I wanted to do was be that kind of mother when I became an adult. So that's where my two comes from, this need to externalize that sense of feeling onto making somebody else happy. As a child, all I wanted to do was earn enough money to be able to buy my mother the things that she couldn't, the shoes that she wanted or the books that she wanted. My mother is an academic, so there was never any hope of her earning a lot of money. I then was awarded a scholarship, an academic scholarship, to one of the most prestigious schools in the country. And I realized very quickly that if I was going to keep that, I had to behave in a very responsible manner. I had to be sure that I was studying hard, working hard, never getting into trouble for fear of losing my scholarship. And this is where my one action comes into play: doing things right, following the rules, being a prefect, showing others how they have to behave. And at the core of all of that was this fear that this could be taken away, this fear that standing in a queue and handing over a credit card, that it could be rejected, this fear of not having enough, not being able to provide for my own family, and want deeply to be able to provide them with a childhood that I didn't have. So there are my three numbers in play. Yes, I'm a 2, which makes me a legacy investor, wanting to do things on behalf of others. But that is blended very carefully with these 2 other very dominant types. The way that I show up in my actions, wanting to do things right, wanting to do the appropriate thing, and that will show up in my choice of investment, but also driven by the fear. My thinking style is one of what could go wrong? What could the consequence be if I make a bad decision? Leading to this defensive investor. So all 3 types are completely active within me, and they play out in this little team environment, this relay environment all the time. I'm going to ask Scott to share his story, the 3 types that make up his tri-type, and how that has played out for you.
Yeah, so I'm not I thought I was just talking about the numbers, but I'll try and do what you just said in terms of what you did with your personal story. Yeah, so I think from my perspective, I came from a family that was, I've already said it, that no one remembered who came second. So very, very driven. And my father went bankrupt when I was 17, and so I've been looking after myself since I was 17. And I don't know exactly how to relate it. I'm nowhere near as advanced as Corin with all of this stuff. But in simple terms, I'm an 8. I push through. I'm the type of guy that if you go to a bachelor party and I don't know anyone, within 5 minutes I'll be telling everyone what to do and where they should be standing for paintball. In some sort of war zone type thing. The 3 for me is easy to understand because, back to the no one remembered who came second. If my brother and I played table tennis, it was the world champs of table tennis. It didn't matter. Everything's the most competitive thing out there. I don't know if I should say this, but cum laude at every degree I've ever done. It's always that stuff.
Cool.
And then on the 7 front is the part that Corin shared with me yesterday. And when we started, firstly, IPS, International Property Solutions, my philosophy was, well, I wanted to buy a house in London and everyone told me you couldn't do it. And we did. We figured out a way to do it by partnering with friends. And then I went to like lawyers and MBAs and they were like, no, you can't do this. And I was like, well, why not? And, so we started the company to help people buy houses and apartments. And then that really evolved into Wealth Migrate, which was, just doing it at scale with regards to I suppose in many ways, ultimately our purpose is to try and help everyone invest like the top 1%. And it's funny because Alex you and I were talking about this even today. You know, we've been dreaming for 10 years about how to marry together democratization and blockchain and everything in between. Now, why does that all relate? Well, when I look at the three things you said between a power investor, a growth investor, and a speculative investor, like I'm basically the riskiest person out there. Like in terms of like, because you know, I'm going to speculate on the future and where it's going. And we launched a crypto coin in 2017, long before most people even knew what it was. You know, growth investor, we've been trying to build a high growth tech company for 10 years. And the power investor, well, I think that's just the ability not to give up. But I don't know, Corin, maybe you'll tell me otherwise. I'll say one last thing before I finish. What Corin did say to me yesterday was that I'm not dreaming enough. I need to go much more back into my 7 to find my spirit again.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I didn't mean for you to tell us a whole story the way I had. I should have clarified that. I really wanted you to just share your experience of your 3 numbers. And I think you've done that absolutely perfectly, how they show up in you. And as we discussed yesterday, that seven thinking style is repressed at the moment in your profile, which says that your 8 and your 3 are super active, are dominant, but that you're missing that integral part of you, your thinking style, your ability to externalize, to dream, to imagine, to feel intoxicated by opportunities and ideas, just as a way of showing how these 3 numbers show up in one person. And I think that's the importance of something like the Enneagram, as opposed to these 2x2 matrix, which says you're amiable or you're not, you're intellectual or you're not, is that as human beings, we are utterly complex and complicated. And for me, the Enneagram is able to show us how that works out. We have this ongoing struggle, this ongoing relationship and conflict and conversation between all 3 parts of us, our heads, our heart, and our intuition, our instincts. And for some of us, those will show up a lot more strongly. You as an 8 are strongly intuitive. You're action-oriented. You're instinctual. Me as a 2, I'm a lot more emotional than that. But thank you. Thanks for that.
Just one thing before, one thing before we bounce. One is Jay Miller's actually said, hey, have you designed a questionnaire via this lens, more in depth, yet friendly, engaging, you know, your navigate, etc. And the answer at the moment is no. But saying that, Corin said, when was the last time you got intoxicated and excited? And I was like, actually, it's this Enneagram and wealth. You know, Brett is online. He sent me a WhatsApp. Like, I think this is actually a game changer. I really do. I've been talking about smart investing, and we're not going to go into this tonight, where you marry together technology and think of it like Tinder for dating, like literally Tinder for investing. And yeah, watch the space. Like, I'm super excited about what Corin and Bianca and myself and Alex and the team want to put together.
Absolutely, Scott. And if at times we sound a bit clumsy talking through this, it's because we're learning as we're going along. I have done over 1,000 Enneagram profiles, and by putting all of that data together and by aligning it with investment profiles and investment strategies, we've been able to put this data together to come up with these profiles. So we're learning as we go along, but absolutely, I don't know of anything else that speaks to the Enneagram of wealth the way that this does.
It doesn't. I've Googled it. I've done my research.
Right. Okay. Of course you have. There's your 7 brain. Okay. He's out there. He's looked. It's not there. Bring it back. Okay. I'm going to throw my own partner under the bus here because she's also an 8-3-7, but she's 7 core. So where Scott has a stronger 8, where he lives in his action, Bianca also has those 3 centers, but she lives in her 7. And B, if I can throw you under the bus there, and if you wouldn't mind just talking about how those 3 numbers show up for you.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Car. So as Corin's pointed out, I'm an 8-3-7, which is the same as Scott, but our cores are inherently different. We operate from different centers, so to speak. So my core is a 7, the enthusiastic visionary. Our kind of type, our tri-type, Scott, is known as the mover shaker. So we get things done and we make things happen. So I think, starting with my core, being a 7, as Corin said, you know, we are the adventurous ones. We are naturally, we kind of have this adventurous approach to finances. I'm always keen to explore new opportunities. But I think for me, coming back to the core of the 7, the biggest thing for us 7s when it comes to finances is financial freedom above all else. I like to look at investments or keep my eye on opportunities that offer growth and a dash of excitement. I mean, savings is a constant battle for a 7, but definitely we like to err on the more adventurous side of opportunity when it comes to money. But along with that financial freedom, I mean, it's not, money is never just about security for us 7s. It's about enjoying life. It's about being able to pursue your passions. It's about being able to start that new venture or being able to travel. And I always sort of, money is that sort of that swing between being able to live your life vibrantly and fully or live your life under constraints. All right, so that, I think that sort of sums up my sort of 7 approach to money. Scott had a little bit of a giggle earlier when it came to the 3. So we share obviously our 3 and our tri-type as well. So with our 3, I mean, that influence really comes into play with that drive for success, for that drive for sort of efficiency. For me, and I'm sure Scott will agree, money contributes to your sort of sense of accomplishment, your sense of status, that sort of recognition that comes with a healthy financial status. And it's a delicate balance for me as a 7, because it's balancing that sort of wild abandon with tangible success and being able to realize the fruits of my long-term, God forbid, look at finances and investments. And then my 8, which as it is my 3rd sort of influence, my 3rd line, definitely adds a layer of sort of assertiveness when it comes to what, knowing what you want in terms of your financial outcomes. And I think as I've gotten older, certainly confidence, in terms of my relationship with money. It's a nice combo for me because it sort of ensures my adventurous spirit of the 7 is backed by a strong desire for sort of control and independence, and I think that again, that independence speaks to that 7 side of being able to be free and being able to not have to rely on anybody else, to be fully in control of my own financial future and my own financial world. It's a very good practice of keeping my 7 in check. So I think for me, between those sort of the 3, it's a balance it's finding a balance rather between sort of, the variety, the excitement and the freedom, but also maintaining that control and that keeping your eye on the end goal and that sort of long game, which is not something us 7s are great at. So wanting to enjoy the journey, but also wanting to kind of focus and maintain, keep a rein and a hold on things at all times, which is sometimes a bit of a fight between my 7 and my 8. But I think as I'm getting on and seeing my way through my 40s, my 8 is starting to win a little bit more and nail us down a little bit better. So that's kind of how my 3, I feel, work together when it comes to finance. I hope that helps and answers the question.
And I just want to be clear, like it's interesting listening to both Karen and Bianca talk, because I'm not an Enneagram expert, and it's fascinating. Every time I listen, I'm learning as well in terms of this process and how in depth it is. And I just want to give people a bit of peace of mind, like even if they've just done the test, this is, no one here learned, to suddenly, graduate at university if you're literally in grade 1. But our intention is to take people on the journey, because I'm not joking. This can be the game changer for people to understand themselves, why they make decisions, and then to make the right decisions for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, Car, is that anything? Have I given you a good sort of roundup of the
You've given me a
chaotic mover
perfect
shaker?
roundup. Our 2 mover shakers in the house. And then I thought, just to kind of segue into Alex's profile, because he also has the 8 and the 3, but he differs greatly from the 2 of you in that he has this incredible 5 brain down here, which makes him the deep thinker, the analytical, the researcher. Alex, would you mind sharing, I know I'm just picking on you people because you've done your profiles. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of how those 3 numbers show up for you.
Yeah, sure. I think before I jump into that, Scott, I think this is a record webinar I think everyone on the call hasn't dozed off. On all the previous calls, people by now would have dozed off because we're using big words that don't resonate. I even found myself like, being the 5, taking notes on my tablet going, I didn't even know that. Like, I didn't even and I've literally watched you present 4 or 5 times now. So anyway, so I think this is, we're all on our own journey, right? In this discovering oneself and self-awareness. But I feel at a personal level, probably about the last 3 months, it's been a magnificent shift from actually being aware of these things and what's behind being an 8 and what's behind being a 3. And why do I think like a 5 and where does that come from? And Karen, I cannot thank you more enough for that session that we had, because it was such a great session. And it's kind of, since then, it's been one, I don't think it was planned, but it's just kind of naturally happened that I see my coach and then this person, it kind of all fits together. So I'm starting to see the matrix. So to me, where my 8 comes from, as I shared with you, my very earliest child memory was, I don't know, I just remember my parents took me to Spur, that you would go to Spur, and the first thing I would do, I would run to the play center and I would want to play on the PlayStation. I think it was still PlayStation 1 at that time. And walking in there, I just remember seeing everyone fighting for the controller. And I just went without even a doubt, off the cuff, but okay, just calm down, guys. You play for 5 minutes, then I'll play for 5 minutes, then you go play there, and then we'll just come back. That's literally my first memory of being an 8. And I think it stems from my family. The more I'm starting to kind of look into it and actually understand personalities, is we have a lot of people are very passionate about helping other people, but also set up businesses and also failing. So at a very early childhood, a lot of my family's businesses failed, and I feel I had to kind of step up very quickly because of that. So that's where that comes from. The 3, it's not what Scott said, but it's almost, if you're not first, you're last. That's literally that's kind of the energy that's been in my family. So that, you have to be first, effectively. So that's kind of where that comes from. And the 5, I don't know, it's, I think, a deep sense of making sure that I know I'm right and that no one can challenge me on what I know. So yeah, I don't really know where that comes from, but as I grow into it, I'll obviously develop more understanding. And in terms of, my finances and so on and so forth, I feel like I'm starting to see the matrix here. It's because as an 8, I just naturally want to kind of protect everyone. And, I want to have enough money to, I have an MPO, and a PBO, and I'm very involved with the community, and literally the family business is a college that empowers people. So it's I want to really work hard. Look, I like my cars and I like my Rolexes, and one day I want that. But to me, it's so much bigger than that. It's helping the community and so on and so forth. And between the 3 and the 5, I think the key thing for me is to be able to go out and really strive for greatness, but actually get that acknowledgement. And I feel robbed from that acknowledgement if I don't get that. I even joke that on our meetings now, because the entire team is doing it. So I'm like, as a 3, I need you to acknowledge me. I've done this. And the 5, being that analytical, and if people then say something, I find this sometimes with Scott as well. He says something and we're like, okay, but what does it mean? What do you actually want to do? I don't really understand. Then he, fortunately for us, we've been working with each other for a while. So when he says blue, I kind of get what he means by now. But yeah, this entire session, this entire awakening of how the Enneagram and wealth, going forward, it should be ingrained in everyone. And I am very excited to walk this journey with you guys to, get our community more engaged in this and actually share more, because that's how we're going to get everyone engaged. So yeah, I'll kind of pause now.
Thank you, Alex. That's absolutely amazing. I love that Spur story. I can just see you walking around, putting everybody in their place. You do this, you behave yourself. I'll tell you when you can move. Thank you very, very much. I do want to know how many things you Googled during this webinar, because I was watching you. I want to know how much research was involved throughout.
I didn't do any, to be honest, I didn't do any Google, but I did write almost 2 pages on my tab. So the strangely thing, I found the 4 very interesting, the 4 and the 3, but more the 4. I didn't actually realize that I wasn't listening the previous times about the 4. So like, yeah, so that was interesting.
I'm so glad you asked, because we've got a 4 on the call who's going to tell you what it's like to be a 4. And with that, I get to, for the first time, welcome the newest member of our team. This is Lexi. She has joined Calio Consulting as an Enneagram coach. She's also heading up our Back to You component of the business, which is workshops, Enneagram-based retreats. But her niche is working with young people, working with high school students, working with university students, so that we can teach people about these types of real deep insights into who they are, the path that they want to follow, what will bring them a sense of fulfillment, but mostly with millennials, helping millennials to understand these deep aspects of themselves. I'm really sorry, Lex, to throw you in it, but I have to, because look at this profile. It's completely different to everything else that we've seen here tonight. The 9, the 4, the 7, I don't know why that 9 looks like it's got a bite out of it. But if you could give us a little bit of background into what this means for you, especially for Alex, because he wants to write a lot of notes on the 4. He's got a gap in his knowledge that's going to activate his fear, make him feel deeply insecure. Thanks, Lex. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And this is actually my first kind of Enneagram Wealth webinar, so I am feeling very new to this, but I'm definitely going to try my best to help everyone understand kind of how this profile plays out with my relationship to money and my thoughts on investing. So as the 9, as Karen mentioned, kind of very early on, developed this need for autonomy, as well as this fear of separation or disharmony or conflict. And I think very early on, I learned that money, or a lack of money, can be a big trigger for conflict and separation. And so when it comes to my vision of my financial future, as well as my investment strategy, it's about having enough and then some. It's about making sure that I can secure my future so that I can have a peaceful life, so that I can have enough and not have to worry and not have to be in stress. And I can do that kind of like coasting along that the 9s love to do. I think the 9 also brings in quite a bit of a purpose-driven investment strategy. The 9s are very good at taking into account all perspectives and caring deeply about the meat and bones of life, the higher purpose, the substance of life. So I think my strategy for investments also, like, how can I make sure that it aligns with a higher purpose or my values? And I think if I try and make sense of this, I think the connection between my 9 and 4, which is a different angle, can also kind of lead me to more of like a spiritual outlook when it comes to money. So I'm very interested in how money feels, the energy of money. I think for me, it's about things like cultivating an abundance mindset, things like focusing on the law of attraction, and how does the energy of money also play out in the energy of wealth. I think that 4 is very strongly in how does money feel? How does this strategy feel? How does this approach feel? And focusing in on, like I said, how it actually makes me feel. I do think, having listened to this presentation, that there's probably a bit of my 4 Alex comes out, where I wonder if I'm ever going to get there. Like, I wonder if I'm ever going to get to a place in my portfolio where I'm like, okay, cool, we've arrived. This is enough. I don't need any more. I think there is a little bit of that feeling of like, I'm always going to be missing out. I'm always going to like be on the back end. So the kind of that drive to like continuously be involved. 9 as well, very much disseminating, or like, how can I put it, putting the action onto someone else. It's quite nice to have someone else make the decision. So like a very hands-on financial advisor is fantastic, because my 7 brain is not going to get bogged down in the details. I don't want to read the like 20-page documents that I need to. I kind of just want someone to give me the high-level overview and give me advice that's going to be like, this is the best way forward, so that my 9 doesn't have to sift through too many things. As we've heard from the kind of 7 brains, also can be a little bit spontaneous with money, a little bit of an impulse buyer, and then that can kind of freak me out, because I'm like, okay, but there's a reason that I'm doing this, because of long-term goals, because of peace and safety and ease. And then I think another big part to the way I view money long-term is also the ease and peace it can bring others. 9s are very big on connection, as I mentioned. And for me, it's about how can I secure myself and have enough and feel at ease, so that I can pass that on to others, so that others don't have to worry, so that they don't have to be in conflict. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's it for me. And also just how I find that making sure that I have an investment strategy that means I'm going to have enough in my future, means that I then have my own money and I'm not controlled by anyone. I have autonomy, because for me, money brings me autonomy as well as freedom. So my 7 and my 9 play out quite a bit there. Definitely need to unpack my 4 a little bit more, and how that one plays out in my relationship to money. But I think in that sense, money can feel quite triggering for me, or it can feel quite anxious towards money. So there's a lot of feelings that go on with money as well. So yeah, I hope I pulled you in.
I think that was the most incredible debut, Lex. Well done.
Thank you.
And I think you've given us really, really deep, beautiful insights into the 4. I love how you talk about how money feels to you, and how it takes you into that exploration around things like the law of attraction, and going deep into that emotional intensity around money. I think you were absolutely brilliant. So well done. You get to do the next webinar. You've proved yourself. Great.
Fantastic.
So thank you to all of you. I think what we've been able to demonstrate here is each one of those 9 types, what it looks like, what it feels like, how it shows up, how it thinks or doesn't think, or acts or doesn't act, and the emotional intensity that comes with each of the types. So I'm really looking forward to the Q&A part of this, Scott, in terms of what people want to know, or what we've left out, or what gaps there might still be. But I really hope that this has given a kind of a foundation to understanding not only the 3 different centers, but the 9 types, and how they embody and live within each of those centers. This is the whole point of the webinar, all the work that, I mean, not just the webinar, but the work that we do with the Enneagram, is to make the unconscious conscious. It's only through understanding at this deep level the way that we work across all 3 centers that we can use it, we can improve on it, we can help it to direct our life. And unless we do that, we no longer have control or choice. And as the Jung quote says, we will call it fate. So I'm going to end with this before we open it up to questions, because I think this embodies everything about the Enneagram. It's impossible for us to see things the way they are. We can only see things the way we are. And I hope we've brought some clarity to that tonight. Thanks, Scott.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you very much to all the ladies who've joined us tonight. It's been brilliant. And we've got some questions coming through. And I think one of them, which seems to be an overarching question, Karen, is that a lot of people have done their Enneagram test already. I'd already done it before I'd met you, etc. And the question here from Anonymous was, I've done my Enneagram already, but how would I set up an appointment with you to go deeper into understanding, etc.? And I suppose it's a double-edged question. One is, do they need to do the test that the specific one you use, or can they use their own test? And secondly, again, the mastermind members get priority, but we do try and want to intend to find a way to help others to be able to do it. But yeah, maybe if you could answer both the questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Absolutely, if you've done the test, we can work off those results. However, there are hundreds of tests out there at the moment. If you do a quick Google search online, you'll find any number, especially those that are free. They are very much surface level. You might well come up with your core type, but what it won't do is take you into that next layer and give you an understanding of your 3 types. We use the Integrative 9 assessment. It's an international assessment. It's by far the most robust. There's a database in the background that is constantly being updated in terms of all of the results that come in. They can give you access to what does it mean for identical twins, to astrology. There's all of this work going on in the background, but from a statistical point of view, the IEQ is the most robust. So we really would recommend that if you are interested in finding your profile, that is the route that you follow, and we can certainly facilitate that. If you have already done an IEQ assessment, it's very easy for us to get access to that profile that I've been showing. Thank you, Scott, on Q. You would not have received this as part of your assessment. This is given to the licensed practitioners, which all 3 of us are here tonight. We can access this from the system. We would just need your details to be able to do that.
But I think the point being is that, like, if I just use myself here, you're going to get this report that's however many pages, 23 pages, and there's actually even a longer one if you want to pay for it, that's 36. I must admit, having 42, sorry, having looked at this and just thought that's a lovely big document that I'm not reading. This was much more useful. Alex can read my 32-page report. But anyway,
he already has.
Like, this is so much more valuable. So it's just, this is literally 2 pages, in terms of the point. So I think just back to Karen, because I did do an assessment beforehand, and the same thing. I was given this whole long big report. So anyway, it's just what's the right word called? Recommendation. Okay, Eugene said, as a person only 3 types, therefore identify your primary based on your investment dislikes, identify your secondary based on your feeling about investing, and your third, not sure how that works. So I think what Eugene's trying to ask here from the question, I don't know if you've got a better idea of what he's trying to say, Karen, but my understanding is he's trying to pick his numbers based on his investment likes and dislikes. And my understanding, my very limited understanding, is it's completely the opposite way around. You do the Enneagram assessment, and then that helps you with the type of your investment. But maybe I'm misunderstanding it as well.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting way around, and that's certainly, we've got 9 types of investors. So if you're able to, if you're finding it easier to pinpoint your investor style rather than your Enneagram style, we can certainly work on it from that way around. It still talks about your motivation, which is what the Enneagram is about. So if you come through and you say, well, I'm very much a power investor and I need to be in control of my investments, I need to know that I'm having the final say, that I can initiate that, we would be able to pinpoint you very likely as an 8. I think what's important to do, in terms of which one comes first, Scott, do you mind throwing your profile back up again? I'm going to use you as my guinea pig. Is that it depends on where you are. And the Enneagram is very much about where you are currently and the decisions that you're making in the moment. The Enneagram doesn't box us, as we've already spoken about. Rather, it says that at this moment in your life, at this moment in your current reality, this is where you find yourself. This is what you look like. What we can see from Scott's profile is that he is very strong in his action at the moment there, 66%, which means that in any decision, that's going to come through. We will see a lot of reactivity. We'll see a lot of force, a lot of drive. So from an investment point of view there, we would see that Scott would make any kind of financial decision right now from his 8 perspective. followed by an emotional perspective. And what we would want then is to tap into that thinking, tap into that 7 to make sure that all 3 of those centers are being given voice, that all 3 perspectives have been taken into account. Otherwise, we're not going to get a balanced view of Scott overall as an investor and his relationship with wealth. So it is going to depend on where you find yourself. And that's the beauty of the Enneagram, is that it gives us a current snapshot rather than saying, this is who you are, and that's what we're going to work with. It's as complex as we are as humans.
But I loved what you said to me yesterday, and please, I hope I get it right. But you said something along the lines of, this report is like my subconscious talking to me. And I really found that quite amazing, actually. And you then went on to say, if you look at your happiness levels and everything, and kind of where your stress is, like I'm 33% happy, I'm 40% like doing what I love, and these are not good things. And you then went on to say, like, the reason being is because I'm not using my 7 at all, and again, it's not a woe me, it's wonderful to like understand these things and go, okay, cool. For me to be back in flow, for me to be firing on all cylinders, and Paolo, I know you're online, so I hope you're listening to this. I need to be, going off to, things where I'm surrounded by people that I'm inspired with, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm just trying to actually answer the question from Eugene. The more you get to know yourself and the more you're going to put yourself in the right position, then that's how you're going to. I mean, I tend to joke with people, and it's actually quite weird. Like, I know Talio through a lady called Hilda. And I met Hilda because I went away to a game farm weekend with amazing people. And it's like, and then you join all these dots, and it's, 12 years later, we're having this conversation. But that's when I was on fire, and I'm just trying to give you an example. Now, people might say to me, well, Scott, what the hell's that got to do with investing? Well, actually, a hell of a lot. Because by meeting Hilda and a whole bunch of other investors, we were able to put together $6 million to do our first commercial deal in 2014. And literally, Wealth Migrate exists because of that. Like, if you want to join all those dots and go back as far as, crowdfunding, I learned through Roger Hamilton. Again, met him at a conference. So I just want to point out, like, back to Eugene's question, the more you get to know yourself, the more you're going to put yourself in the environment to make the decisions which are better for yourself.
Absolutely. And the more you are able to communicate that to the people who are helping you with your financial decisions. At Talio, we do an Enneagram like this with all of our clients, because it ensures that the conversations we're having are informed, that we're talking to the individual in their entirety. If we had you as a client right now, Scott, we would be expecting to see, as I said, a lot of reactivity, a lot of kind of assertive around, but this is what I want, and this is where I want to go, because I want to be first, I want to be at it. We would be hesitant because we know that we're not seeing the full picture. And the point of the Enneagram and the fact that everything is broken down into 3 says that if you are feeling stuck, it's because one of those 3 elements is repressed or is underrated or is not expressed. And those are the conversations, the types of questions that we would then be asking you to ensure that that voice is given the same amount of airtime.
Well, I mean, I think you've just sort of touched on it wasn't a question, but it's a point I want to bring up. So for the mastermind members, and we're going to obviously have our deeper session next month, but there are people that have got hold of us and gone, why would I do a test? And what's this got to do with investing, et cetera? And I think actually where I'm going from my own experience, and I know Alex was, made a video about how impressed he was, but it's almost getting to the point to get the whole Calio experience, to get the Wealth Migrate experience and all this, like the Enneagram is actually going to be pivotal to the whole thing, because we're going to have to know where people are. As much as it's like asking for someone's balance sheet and P&L, profit and loss, it's almost like you can't help someone come up with a strategy unless you know where they're at, like, if that makes sense,
Yeah, and where they're at now, not where they were in their 30s or 5 years ago, but what's going on for you right now, and how can we make decisions based on where you are today and where you want to be in 5 years' time?
Yeah, no, perfect. Anonymous, it's hard to help you when you're anonymous, but I did not receive the document with my drawn out description. How do I get the short one? Again, I don't know how to help you because I don't know who you are. But
yeah, I can answer that. We've had a lot of people who've contacted us to do the assessment. You will then get your full report, as Scott has shown. You'll get the 27 or the 42, whichever one it was that you asked for. The only way that you can get that small breakdown with all of the different, your rainbow and all of the different colors, is in your feedback session. We're ethically obliged. We can't give you that without the coaching session to go with it. So that's how you'll have to get hold of Bianca to set up a feedback session, and then we can give you that profile document.
Look, it won't mean anything to you. It won't mean anything to you unless you do the feedback session anyway. Trust me. I've got a book that's worth like 400 pages on it, and like yeah, it's just a waste of time. This is a good one because we actually had this at the mastermind last month, and people were challenging the accuracy of it. And Tumelo here said, you know, I always thought the Enneagram is done with one's birth date. Is this wealth profiling done differently with a special assessment questionnaire test? And what is the accuracy level if done differently? So can I just answer that quickly before you do, Karen? Firstly, Tumelo, I highly recommend you watch the recording that Bianca actually did for us about 2 or 3 weeks ago. You know, reach out to Alex or I, or, you know, we could put it back in the Wealth Hacker group, because what Bianca did very succinctly is explain the whole Enneagram, where it comes from, the history of the Enneagram. And, you know, I don't think we need to repeat that all tonight per se, but what I do think would be quite important is, Karen, just to talk to the accuracy of it, because actually some of the mastermind members were like, you know, there's lots of these profiling things out there. You know, how do we know about the accuracy?
It's not done with your birth date. I think that's numerology. I think it's done with your birth date. The Enneagram it would fall into the category of psychometric, in that it's there to assess your motivations, both overt and covert, both intrinsic and extrinsic. It's the assessment itself is, as I said, incredibly robust. Nobody answers the same assessment because the algorithm in the back is constantly updating based on the way that you've answered the question before. It's a little bit like that choose your own adventure. So whichever way you answer is going to send you off on your own assessment. It's an in-depth assessment. There are 127 questions. There are different styles, so it talks to all learning styles and learning preferences. There are short, quick answers, and there's some rateables, and there's some scalables, and there's all kinds of things, and that all lends to this statistically robust assessment.
Yep.
That sounded really clumsy, but I hope that's answered the question.
I think one other thing that I took away listening to you is this has been around for 5,000 years, and, you know, it's just got more and more robust. And certainly I've done a lot of profiling stuff out there, and this seems to be by far and away the most accurate, and yeah, for various different reasons, which I find really interesting.
When I started with the Enneagram 20 years ago, the only way that you could do your assessment was to read 9 different paragraphs. And then you would work out how many words or phrases or sentences in each paragraph were true about you and how many were not. And on the basis of that, we would try and work out your type. So I, as a practitioner, I am delighted that we've got an assessment like this that can do all of that hard work for us.
Yeah, well, I've actually got my book downstairs. And like I told you, it's literally it's bigger than the Bible. And I bought it, and I thought I was so clever, and I've never even read my own profile, let alone anyone else's. So
I can kind of attest to that. Like, literally, I'm not scared to start reading something, but I literally opened the book, read half the page, and said, no, this is too much. Like, it's just too much. So it's what I think, what was achieved in that session with you, Karen, was something amazing, because you gave me your educated kind of way of explaining it to me, and then I kind of explained it back to you, and then you gave me insight. And I think that's where it landed for me, because without that insight, reading a document is any person can read a document, but that space to have insight and getting that that having a safe space to actually feel vulnerable and feeling that someone actually cares and actually is going to give you the right insight here is what was so special. So, that's, again, I'm an 8, so just go do it.
Just go do it. But you just scared all the 8s. They've all just left the webinar because you mentioned the word vulnerability. So thanks for that, Scott. They've all just gone. I had a thought as you were talking, back to Tamelo's point. Again, this is from the first webinar, and I know we haven't touched a lot on the origins in this one as a follow-on, but the Enneagram is nurture. It's not nature. You choose your Enneagram during your formative years in response to the family environment, in response to your birth order, in response to culture, in response to the time in which you're born. If you were born into a different family, or if you were the third child as opposed to the firstborn, you would have chosen a different Enneagram. And this is important because of the age in which you choose your Enneagram, during those very early formative years, you do not have the resources to understand why. You don't know why you are developing those defense mechanisms, those default behaviors, the kind of knee-jerk reactions. You just know that they work. You know that you get what you need from it, whether it's connection or independence or freedom or security. And because it works for you, it changes from a habit into a compulsive behavior. And that's what the Enneagram is able to pinpoint in that assessment. As Scott says, it touches on the subconscious through the questions. You don't realize what you are, the information that you're giving by answering those questions until you see it all on one page. So it is like your subconscious becoming conscious. It's your very early child self speaking to you as an adult and saying, this is what we're working with, and this is why. And the question then is, how much of that do I need to keep? Does it still serve me? And if it doesn't, what can I do about it? Because as an adult, I have choice.
Yeah, that's what I love the most. I'm born short. I can't suddenly become tall. But the point being is that I can actually evolve and take the best parts of me and evolve into a better leader, a better investor, whatever. And I think a better person, basically. So that's a wonderful thing. Sharon said, yeah, Alexi, welcome to the team. You did a great job. I'm so excited to hear that you'll be focused on the younger generations. Oh my God. I even know what OMG stands for. The two Alexis the two Alexes will be a force to be reckoned with. I can't wait to hear what the two of you accomplish. And I do actually know that Alex literally, firstly, I just want to agree with her. You did a wonderful job tonight, so well done. And secondly, Alex sent a voice note to our whole leadership team today about your guys' conversation this morning and how excited he was about the concept we've been talking about for ages, which is millennials, wealth, and everything in between. And, we talk a lot about generational wealth. And at the last wealth weekend, it was quite funny because I'm going to call them, we're not adults. What would we be? Like old people. And all the old people were sitting around basically talking about generational wealth. And then Judy had brought her daughter, and we were like, well, why don't we just ask the lady in her 20s what she thinks about it? And so anyway, it's wonderful to have you as part of the conversation. And I completely agree with what Sharon said.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to jump in there. I think this morning was a massive eye-opener, and it's kind of been in the back of my mind all day. Launching Millennials in Wealth is something that we have been talking about, Scott, for a couple of years, and the plan is to effectively launch it next year. So watch the space. But I think there has been let's just call it a miss of a partnership or a lack of a partnership. And I almost feel like we're getting very close to perfect. Again, the 5 in me wants to analyze everything and make sure that every website link is correct and perfect. But I think we just need to kind of get going. So I'm very excited to do this with you and take it forward effectively.
Sharon also said,
Lexi just told us that she can't unmute herself because her mouth is frozen. So she's not being all deep and meaningful and silent. She literally just is silent.
That's fair enough. Sharon said, I don't have a particular question. I'm saving them for future webinars on the Wealth Weekend. Sharon's part of the mastermind. But I do want to attest to the fact that the Enneagram assessment is a mind blower. the session with Karen opened up so many things for me. I really think it is an avenue to know thyself, which is knowing anything and everything else. So yeah, well done to you guys, Karen and the team. And I'm actually going to save that, Sharon, and I'm going to put that in the mastermind group just so that everyone else sees that. And then I can see that Alex has posted Bianca's email if people want to reach out to her and do the test. Like I said to you, the mastermind members will get priority, and we've organized a special deal for mastermind members, but I'm sure Kellyo can figure out something for other people in terms of that process. So in terms of that, so Carola, that answers your question. And then Carola also asks, and I know you've told me how to pronounce your name before, but I apologize if I'm getting it wrong. Thanks for a very interesting webinar. Do you go into the lines or arrows of the Enneagram, the directions each type tends to move towards when good space or when downward negative spiral? Or are they, say, spirituality when in consolation or in desolation, or does that not apply to investing aspect?
That's an excellent question. We have to break the content into these different webinars because there's just so much to go into. The lines are an integral part of anybody's profile because it talks about how we move out of our Enneagram, out of our stuckness, how we move forward. So yes, we absolutely do talk about that, and in depth. We'll go into that in your individual coaching sessions in a kind of a one-on-one space, but in upcoming webinars, we're going to be talking about the lines and how they do help us to move. So thanks for that question.
And that, ladies, is what they call that. This is that point, Karen, when Garth always says to me, can I go home now? Like, this has been going on too long. No, but on a serious note, I love the energy and everyone asking questions. It's wonderful. And to many actually tonight in the mastermind, we'll be going into this in a lot more detail literally next week in terms of the assessment. Do try and do your assessments because, again, I can promise you, if you take Sharon or you take Alex or you take Scott, it's one thing to get the theory. It's another thing to get the theory when you actually know who you are. Like it makes such a difference in terms of, and it's actually starting to become interesting to me because I've gone now beyond this is who I am. And I'm actually quite proud in our own little team, like out of our leadership team, which is only 5. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but I actually got their primary number right. And it's quite nice because as you start to get to know this, you can start to guess like who different people are, which is useful in terms of understanding who they are in terms of that process. So what I'm going to do is just basically final comments, if you don't mind, Karen, from yourself, from Bianca, and Alexi, if you want to type it, I can say it for you because your mouse is not working.
She can't type either.
She can't type either. Okay, well, don't worry, we'll bring you an IT guru to help you. No, but anyway, just let's start with you first, Bianca, and then we'll go to Karen, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, look, I think as much as you guys feel you are learning every single week about the Enneagram, I think that we're on this sort of collective journey, aren't we? I feel like I'm learning more and more all the time, the deeper we go into this Enneagram and wealth and how nuanced it is, how complex it is, as Karen said. Just the Enneagram alone is a complex system, never mind that of finances. So I think the synergy between the two and the marriage of the two and this entire concept feels quite groundbreaking for me, and I'm really, really excited to see where we're going to go. I mean, between the two Alexes, as Sharon said, and the Enneagram of Wealth itself, I'm can't wait to see it all unfold. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here this evening.
Awesome.
Yeah, I second that 100%, and as a deep emotional too, I'm filled with a lot of gratitude for all of you who've shown up tonight, for the comments, for the questions, and to all of you who have done your assessments and who have had the courage to put yourself out there and to start exploring yourself, to really go deep into those often unconscious fears and desires and needs and defense mechanisms. I want to say well done. It's incredibly brave, and I hope that you are reaping the benefits from it. I also hope that more of you will continue to do so. So thank you for staying with us, and have a great evening.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Alex, final comment from you, and then I'll just wrap up telling people what they can do as next steps, and the ladies can jump off with their one.
Yeah, I think, sure. I don't know. I'm usually quite good at this wrapping up, but I think a simple state that I'm currently in is grateful. I think we always aim to add more value to our community and, you know, continue to help them along on their unique journey in wealth and understand what that means to them. And by doing this partnership and doing these webinars, I sincerely hope that we are kind of opening the eyes of the community or tribe, whatever you want to call it, on what could be possible if you just understand how this kind of fits into your personality. So yeah, I'm excited. It's been a pleasure sharing the screen with everyone, and I look forward to doing it again.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much, ladies. I'm just going to pivot quickly, and I always do this just to finish off in terms of people, if they are feeling overwhelmed, and it's not unusual for people to feel overwhelmed in terms of what to happen. I always get accused of, you know, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And the reason being is I absolutely love personal development, 28 years of it, and I bring it as much as possible to people, but sometimes it can feel overwhelmed. 10 years ago, we used to get on airplanes and we'd fly over to England, America, Australia, you know, and we'd go buy property together, and people got to spend time and learn. And we really wanted to recreate that. And I started this evening, you know, talking about people like Jordan and or Victoria and some of their needs. And there's a little game I always like to play. And that's if I asked you an extremely direct question. And if a doctor came along to you and said, you've got a serious medical condition and you have to literally lose 10 to 15 kilos as quickly as possible. Now, I hope this doesn't happen, but it's just going to illustrate an important point. Now, I repeat to you, if the doctor said to you, you had to lose 10 to 15 kilos as quickly as possible, what would you actually do? And you'd have two options. You know, you could go do your Enneagram test on your own, or you could have a coach. Okay, well, which one do you think would help you get better results? You know, let's go back to your health. You could go home and you could get a home study course to try lose your 10 to 15 kilos, or you could have a coach. Which one is it? Let's be honest, let's be frank. And we all know that if we're honest with ourselves, it would be getting a coach to be able to get results. And I tend to say the same thing with wealth. What about if you're bringing it all together? What about if you're starting to know yourself, if you're looking at your whole portfolio construction, if you're looking at your investments, and rather than trying to do it all on your own, you've actually got people to help you through this and actually helping build globally diversified passive income. Now, if you want to do it, you can. You know, if you experience super sophisticated, confident, motivated beyond belief, we've got just what the doctor ordered. You can literally go out and, as you know, right information, right partners. So we built it. We built, you know, Wealth Going Global. You can go learn all about it. 6 different modules. You can go meet all the partners, and you can literally go through asset mastery. But according to a coach, according to Harvard, you'll be 400% better off if you have a coach than if you try and do it all on your own. And then I joined a mastermind back in 2011 with a guy called Roger Hamilton. And I just realized I was getting profound results by being with a group of like-minded people than with a one-to-one coach. And when I found this video, it made perfect sense to me.
No, this is extremely predictable. There's tons of research around it. Humans change 5 times faster in groups than they do with a one-on-one coach, consultant, or therapist in that case.
Wow.
So I started looking back at business models and people who had done this effectively over the generations. Masterminds aren't new, folks. They're not new at all. People have been doing this for thousands of years. And when you put a collection of people together who are all committed, all driven, and all so want to make the right changes happen, and you give them a leader to follow who's willing to get in the trenches with them, all of a sudden you start finding real, rapid life or business transformation.
So I repeat what he said there. You know, humans change 5 times faster in groups than they do with a one-to-one coach, consultant, or therapist. If you get a collection of people who are all committed, all driven, and so want to make the right changes happen, and you give them a leader to follow who's willing to get in the trenches with them, all of a sudden you start to find real, rapid life and business transformation. And so the question I have for you is, if this is you and you're here in your comfort zone, do you want to move to where the magic is? And that's really why we created the Mastermind. And the Mastermind is a collaboration between ourselves and the Calio team. And the bottom line is, it's all about global diversification. It's about building a globally diversified passive income. It's about diversifying across countries, currencies, assets, partners, and time. How does it work? There's 5 simple steps. The first is that you sit with me. So I'm a fully certified coach. I'll take you through a process to get very clear on what are the top 3 outcomes you're wanting to achieve with your top 3 measures. Then you sit with the Calio team and you get very clear on your portfolio construction. Where are you at the moment and how do you optimize your current portfolio? And just by the way, what Bianca and Karen and I are talking about doing is including in this the whole Enneagram and wealth. It's going to be another facet in this whole process so that people understand not only where they want to get to, but where are they starting from. Once you've got that, then you build a plan, and it's about getting from A to B. Now you know where you want to get to, and you know where you're starting. And then it's about execution. Most people struggle with accountability, so there's a monthly check-in every month. It's about accountability, mindset, and execution. And then it's about the ongoing investment rhythms. What's happening in the market? What are the different investments out there? What are my returns? And in simple terms, am I on plan? Am I on track in terms of the process? 5 simple steps to achieve your objective over time. We chuck in Wealth Going Global if people want the substance about the home study course where you can learn about the top 5 countries to invest, the top 5 currencies, the top 15 assets, how to find the right partners and how to build a wealth plan over time. And we also chuck in asset mastery. So you've got access to the right information and the right partners. And this journey that we're on, this Enneagram and wealth, is something that's super exciting for us as we build towards it. Now, we had 2 choices. A lot of masterminds out there can be $50,000. If you go to America, that's pretty much the going rate. We're not interested in that. And the whole idea was we wanted people to be able to invest and to be able to get results. 25,000, same thing, pretty much a standard rate in England. Even $10,000 is, again, a lot of people, a lot of my peers are like, you're absolutely crazy. But what we wanted to happen is for people to pay attention. When people pay attention, then they get results in terms of that process. So I always say to people, we're not going to charge you 10,000, but if we did, would it be worth it to you if you achieved your freedom goal? Yes or no? And just type in the chat box. Just think about it. What would you be prepared to commit if it would help you achieve your freedom goal? What about if it was to give you peace of mind for you and your family and know that you were secure? Would it be worth it then? What about if it was to help protect the wealth that you'd built? You've worked hard for your money. Would it be worth it then? What about if it could save you a decade of time? Would it be worth it then? And finally, what about if it was able to help you build globally diversified passive income and give you peace of mind? Would it be worth it then? And it reminds me of a story of Michael. 10 years ago, 2013, he came on a buyer's trip in February 2013. And he was sort of haggling over money up front. And he's like most people, he didn't trust it. All sounds too good to be true. Anyway, he took the plunge and he actually came. And he said it was the best money he ever spent. And he went on to say it would never have happened if he tried to do it himself. And the challenge that we've got is that the lesson we learned from Michael is try and make things as affordable as possible so that people can experience it, but also find the balance between people that are committed so that you get the right caliber of people. And one of the challenges we've got is that we can only offer it to 5 people because it's a bespoke offering. You meet with me one-to-one, you deal with Alex one-to-one, you deal with the Calio team one-to-one, you meet with Bianca and Karen in terms of that process. So it's not something at a mastermind level that we can do at scale. But if what you've heard and where we're at, and tonight is not the intention to go through this in detail, then I'd suggest that you just book a call. Go to diversificationmastermind.com. It's literally an application call. And we want to understand what you're trying to achieve. We want to identify what your risks are and what your goals are. And we want to see if you qualify. And then equally, it's your opportunity to meet with our team to understand more about the mastermind and to see if there's synergy. I was talking to someone today about this, and they were upset in the beginning, and now they're raving about the experience. And I said, well, I was pretty confident you would get there because we spend a lot of time vetting to make sure we get the right people, understanding what they're trying to achieve to help them achieve their objectives. We do ask that if someone books a call, to please make sure that they try and turn up on time because your time is valuable and so is ours. And I do remind people that unfortunately, we've only got 5 spots available at any one time to onboard. If you want to go and look at the return on investment and the way the sort of coaching and masterminds work, you can go and look at the studies. You can go look at all the testimonials in terms of what different people that have done the courses have actually achieved and what they've actually got to say. And then, finally, and that's on that link, you can literally go to diversificationmastermind.com. And then finally, something that we're actually working on, which is a guarantee, is that it's quite exciting for us because people say to us, oh, but what happens? How do I know, when this is going to end, or how do I know I'm going to get results? And our logic is, if people are committed and are prepared to join the mastermind, then they'll make an investment of say, $5,000. And until they get that investment back in passive income, we will work for them for free. It's a pretty solid commitment. I just want to be clear on what I just said there. I didn't say we'll work for you for free until you make money. I said that if someone makes an emotional and financial commitment, we will work for them for free until they get the outcome and the result that we agreed up front. So from a return on investment perspective, if people want to, and again, Alex and I can take this through in a one-to-one much better. But actually, if you do the maths, and if you took $5,000 and you had $12,000 to invest, and you do it over 5 years, it's a 254% return on investment. You'd be putting in $5,000 today to make $12,000 in today's money. In 10 years' time, it's about $57,000. And over 30 years, it becomes a really large number in terms of this process. So if you're interested, literally go to diversificationmastermind.com, set up the application call. Alex or myself will sit with you and see if you literally qualify. And I think for the purposes of tonight, it's been a long session in terms of that process. So I'll answer any questions. Any thoughts from your side, Alex, in terms of anything that I haven't covered? I'm not going to go through all of the slides and all of the calls to action and everything else in terms of that process. There's plenty of testimonials. I mean, I want to, we can sit and we can go through with people's property portfolios. This is something that comes up all the time. I've got a property. Should I keep it? Should I sell it? So this is all about optimizing your portfolio. People sit and they've got investments all over the place, and it's chaotic, and there's confusion, and bringing it all under one roof in a bespoke way is certainly something that appeals to a lot of people in terms of that overall process. And simplification is so important with one advisor that's built a bespoke solution for you from a tax and structuring perspective. Getting all the information and having a pan, it is so liberating. And there's so many other comments that people have made all the way through the process. You can go and watch videos from, Cynthia, who said, thank God for this mastermind, the partners it brings us, and the exponential learning curve it gifted us. You can go and meet with, so she's a teacher out of Italy, a single mom. And between ourselves and the Calio team, they actually helped her start earning a passive income in less than 2 months, which, I highly recommend listening to a testimonial. Abdul, that's an auditor, so highly sophisticated investor, but wanted to go international and diversify. And it's so interesting to kind of hear his story in terms of the process. And the final things I say, people say, well, why should you work with us? And there's plenty of reasons that people say they shouldn't. How do I know to do it and protect myself from scams? But I always say the 3 biggest things are, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, and I don't have the knowledge. And in simple terms, the mastermind was built for people that don't have time. It's about being time efficient. I don't have the money. Well, you don't have the money to be an international investor, with $100 million, most people, to go out and do it properly. But if you've got access to some of the best resources and partners out there, then you'll actually be surprised what you can achieve with the money you do have, not only in protecting it, but globally diversifying it. And then finally, I don't have the knowledge. Well, you get that through partnership. But in simple terms, to my knowledge, we as a collaboration are the only one that have ever done it where you can truly get a bespoke, globally diversified solution in terms of that process. My final couple of comments. I've invested a lot of money over the years in my own development, and this comes back to that 7 that I need to sort out and go back and start doing again. But Singularity University, which was all about learning about exponential tech. Roger Hamilton, which was This was the one I was telling you about, entrepreneurship. Mavericks, that's how I got to spend 2 weeks with Necker Island. Tony Robbins on Fiji. So I've certainly put my money where my mouth is. And the reason being is that I found that masterminds geometrically move me and those around me forward in terms of that process. So why not join 4,000 other investors, whether it's wealth protection, Plan B, peace of mind, diversification, freedom, global citizen, empowering your children, immigration, or living a life unlimited. That's the formula. Globally diversified passive income at the middle, diversifying across countries, currencies, assets, partners, and time. And if you are interested, literally go to that link and you can sign up and we'll help you through that process. 2 other things just to remind you. The navigator is there if you would like to know your next steps. And just by the way, Jay's idea is brilliant. I have every intention of somehow integrating into that Enneagram test, that IEQ9 or whatever it is, and actually building out all of this functionality that Karen and Bianca are putting together so that people can walk away with reports. But that's back to smart investing. That's a very exciting thing of where the world is actually going. The challenge is at the end of July. And next week, we actually have our final webinar, which I highly recommend. I met David for the very first time about 10 days ago, last week actually. And I was blown away by who he is and his caliber. He used to work with McKinsey's, with the wealthiest Indian families, the family offices, the billion dollar families in India. He's based out of America. And through his relationship with Nicholas and the Calio team, he's coming to share with the rest of us what we need to know about generational wealth, how we empower our children, how we pass on our legacy, which is a very wrapping way to bring it all together. So in conclusion, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think it's a very nice way to sum up what has been a thrilling exercise this evening in understanding where we're at. And, from my perspective, Bianca, I just want to thank you guys for all the hard work and preparation you've put into this. And I truly am excited about the journey you're taking me and the other mastermind members on, because you're just touching the tip of the iceberg here. And for those that want to do it on their own, they can go read all the books and stuff. But for those that want to join the mastermind and want to go far, I look forward to going together with you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Scott.
Alex, anything I've forgotten? I feel like I was so excited and interested in what everyone was talking about tonight. I lost track of time. So we're nearly on 2 hours here.
Yeah, doesn't feel like it, right?
No.
No, I think you've touched on the key points. I think something that I said to a client this morning is, do you have your personal trader? Do you have a personal, set of advisors? Do you have international experience in law and taxes? Do you have your own team that kind of can tell you about Enneagram and wealth and, what's behind that and coaching sessions? And probably most importantly, do you have your own, due diligence team that can vet deals for you? And if you have all of those things, I don't think we could add much value. If you don't, we probably could. And you should probably review our offer. So I think I'll close with that cheek and tongue, Scott. But yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for your time. As always, to the community, it's wonderful to have you all here. Thanks for the engagement and the questions. And I will stop sharing and we will see you next week for our final webinar in this 7 series webinar, which has been so fascinating on this journey. Good night, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.